Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of PORA, and we are here open mic live because Caleb dropped the ball today. I'm here with my co-hosts Travis and Caleb. We got also Tyler joining us for open mic night. So what's
What
up, guys?
up?
Oh, what's up, Tyler?
Oh man, I'm kind of bummed out right now. Actually,
Why is
I'm
that?
in,
You were hoping to see The Exorcist or what?
I'm in a sling.
Oh,
I took a pretty nasty fall on my skateboard today, and so I came down. I was trying to ollie over some concrete and some boards and stuff that I had stacked up. And yeah, I came down on my elbow pretty good, so I got to go get X-rays tomorrow. So yeah, I'm kind of in some pain right now, guys. But my bad.
It's all right, man. It
Yeah,
happens,
it
bro.
does.
I don't know why a 30-something would be out skateboarding, but you're a little
Look,
old for
man,
that,
I saw a YouTube
right.
video. I had a midlife crisis, and I was like, I got to get back into this because I did. I mean, I skated whenever I was a kid, and so
Yeah.
I was like, man, this is fun, and it was fun until this now. So I think I'll just stick to riding around.
There you go.
All right.
Anyway,
Well,
we'll see.
why don't you, Caleb, tell us what's going on tonight?
Well, yeah, we're just having an open mic night where people can join in. I think we've all invited people, and we're just kind of improvising this. That's usually how open mic nights go, and we've done some in the past where people throw in topics that they want to talk about, and we see how it goes. So, yeah, to give context for Russell's comment about dropping the ball, I was told last minute a few hours ago that unfortunately our guest could not make it because he's sick. I don't believe his sickness is demon related, so that's good. But I believe it was some kind of stomach virus. So we're going to reschedule it probably, I believe, next weekend, maybe, if that's what we have planned, but we'll see. So stay tuned for that. We'll still be having the show.
Yeah, so next week at Friday, same time, right?
Assuming
That's
that's how it goes. Yeah.
Yep. All right. Well, we got our first guest. Hello, Diana. First
Hi,
time on the
Diane.
show.
How you doing?
Welcome.
That's my great aunt, by the way, for anyone who's wondering.
So
Nice to have you on. Yeah.
sure, ask us a question, anything you want.
Okay, I'm going to ask this question, and it's kind of always been in the back of my mind because I've always been an avid reader. I love reading books, but I read a lot of books about reincarnation. I would just kind of like maybe y'all's thoughts on it. It's kind of, it's annoying to me because there are a lot of people that have written books, that have said that they have been reincarnated from a previous life. And I was just kind of wondering what your thoughts might be on that. Anybody?
All right,
Yeah.
Caleb, we'll let you start this one out.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on, Diane. It's nice. I know that you follow me on Facebook, so I appreciate the support and you joining on the show. And I'm glad that you know how to get on stuff like this. So that's great. As far as reincarnation, I haven't studied this in that much detail. I know there are books on it, and the ones that interest me are the ones where people are able to give information that they wouldn't have known. So you have cases of kids saying, oh, I had this past life, and then when people look into it, stuff matches up. So that's really interesting, and I don't really know what to think of it. But theologically, I feel like I have issues with reincarnation just because it's not really mentioned in the Bible, and there's kind of confusing ideas of what happens to the soul and stuff like that. So I don't really buy it at the moment. So I don't know what anyone else's thoughts are on that.
I guess to touch on it real quick, I kind of there's ways we can kind of look at this. Like we can accept monotheism by philosophical arguments of simplicity and unification, right? And then I think there's also philosophical arguments that can be made for the Trinity of two being needed for a love relationship. And we have like the historical evidence of the resurrection and things of that sort that lead me to conclude that Christianity is true, and Christianity seems kind of contra to reincarnation. So I just kind of reject it on that basis without like any further knowledge about it. That's just kind of where I'm at.
So my take on this, and it's really interesting. I didn't really get into this topic until I saw a story about this kid, and I won't go into details about it just because it's been a while and I don't want to get anything wrong. But pretty much this kid from a very young age remembered a past life, and it was verifiable through pictures and just old records of things like old war records and things like that, and it was verified that this kid knew who he was
I know
talking about.
what your case you're talking about.
You know what I'm
too,
talking about?
I think.
I
I think it was in
forget,
Louisiana, right?
Might be.
He's
It was
like
in the States
he was
for
a
sure.
World War II vet, I think.
He was an airplane pilot. He was a pilot.
Yes. Yeah,
And
I know what
this
you're talking
kid
about.
remembered. So I don't know how that's explainable. I mean, I really don't, but there are cases like that. However, if I want to go to the Bible, and I do want to get your guys' takes on this as well, because I've heard it brought up in a reincarnation discussion. So I want to go to Hebrews 9:24, and the main verse is 27, but I want to give a context. So, for Christ did not enter a sanctuary made with hands, the representation of the true sanctuary, but into heaven itself, and he appears now in God's presence for us. And he did not enter to offer himself again and again, the way the high priest enters the sanctuary year after year with blood that is not his own, for then he would have had to suffer again and again since the foundation of the world. But now he has appeared once for all at the consummation of the ages to put away sin by his sacrifice. Now here's the important verse, 27. And just as people are appointed to die once and then to face judgment, so also after Christ was offered once to bear the sins of many, to those who eagerly await him, he will appear a second time, not to bear sin, but to bring salvation. So with that being said, it's kind of stated black and white.
Right.
And this is the way the argument went, in the video that I seen, that no, people are appointed to die once and then face judgment, not twice, not three times, but biblically once.
Right on. I guess I'm up next. I kind of concur with you, Tyler, on that, and I think that gives Travis's idea a logical basis to say, the Bible's kind of against this, and I think so too. There are those unexplained cases out there, but there's also unexplained cases of UFOs, and I don't have any good explanation that little green men are walking around or even able to get to our planet because
they're in the ocean.
Well, you know what? So the way that space is very, very against life in most respects. I think we're in our spaceship right now.
Right.
So like unless they can go faster than the speed of light, which I think is impossible. I think that's as fast as you can get in this universe, and I think Travis would agree with me there. But even at the speed of light, I don't think they'd ever be able to reach us due to the and I don't want to make this about aliens because I'm going to bring it back, but I don't think they can make it because of the distance, right? There's nothing close enough with that, but to bring it back to reincarnation, there are these unexplained instances, but I think if we were able to, and I don't know if we can, and I don't know if that's a possibility, if we investigate it enough, I think we'll find an explanation for it. A good explanation, and that even goes with some Christian claims on miracles and stuff. I mean, if we investigate it, we can throw out some of the ones that aren't miracles. So, I mean, we'd have to look into those cases individually and take them by a case-by-case basis. But to be broadly open to reincarnation, I don't think I am as well. So.
I was just thinking as you said that, I'm wondering if it's possible if some of these experiences could be like satanic or, in nature or some kind of deception.
That's what Gary Habermas thinks. He and J.P. Moreland wrote a book on it, and they had a chapter on reincarnation, and he thought that it was demonic, but I thought that seemed a bit ad hoc, but maybe that's just me.
Well, I mean, logically, Caleb, we have to accept the notion. If we're going to accept the notion that there's a God and we're going to accept the notion that there's Christianity, we have to accept the notion that there are some real spiritual forces that are working and will try to deceive people and so forth. And I don't think it's beyond Satan to work in that way. I mean, if you think about it, why are all these false religions propped up to begin with? It's to get our focuses off of Christ in the first place. So, I mean, there has to be some element of truth to that. And however far we can take it, I don't know. And I think that's probably where your concern more is.
Yeah, put a pin in that for next week. By the way, that'll be a question to ask.
Definitely will.
Yeah. No, I was just concerned because I know people will say they'll pull the same card to say, well, I mean, say, you know, when Jesus was performing miracles, they said, oh, he's doing this in the name of Beelzebub, or I know Celsus thought that Jesus practiced witchcraft and that's why he was able to do this. So I feel like that goes both ways. People can say, well, you know, Satan's just tricking you to start a false religion, and that's why Christianity happened, because I can explain all this by saying that the devil did it. So I just am very careful with, I think people can use that for anything they don't like. So I'm just trying to.
But can we, Caleb, because aren't we supposed to test the spirits, right? I mean, isn't there that, doesn't the scripture give us the ability to be able to discern which is of God and which is not, right?
Right.
I don't think that Satan will use any deception about Jesus rising again, you know, when it's specifically revealed by the Holy Spirit that that's not something he does, you know. So there is that element we have to bring. We have to bring that element of you know what God has revealed to us to that table and examine.
But could someone say that what God has revealed to you is also Satan deceiving you? What you think is the Holy Spirit is really this? I'm just being the advocate.
Yeah.
Pun intended.
I think that's ad hoc.
Yeah, I think not when I have a source that tells me otherwise that is backed up, and for me that is pretty much.
Real quick though, just to Caleb's point, kind of let me jump on Caleb's side for just a second. So how do we tell the difference though? Like, is there something that as Christians we can say, yeah, that's definitely the Holy Spirit, or do we just take that, compare it to the Bible, and say, you know, what is that variable that says this is the Holy Spirit indeed?
Well, as a Christian, I would go by the Word of God, by what Scripture says, and like, you know, test the spirits to see whether they are from God. I mean, I think we need the foundation of Scripture to kind of parse these things out.
And when you talk about the Holy Spirit, I think the Scripture is from the Holy Spirit. So I think that's his work. You know, that's it's been preserved by him. It's been inspired by him. So I mean, I think that's our standard. That's our measure. And that's how we measure it.
I mean, in a way, like the Holy Spirit like testifies to us that it is indeed him, right?
Well, let me ask you this. I have another question too.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Well, not a question, but something that happened to me back in, I'm going to say it was probably back in the 1996, 1997. There was this, I don't know if y'all ever heard of Medjugorje. This is where supposedly the Blessed Mother appeared to, I don't know, 3 or 4 children. And anyway, the children that had seen the Blessed Mother, they had I don't know what you would call it, a gathering down at Memorial Auditorium, downtown Louisville. So me and my 2 girlfriends, we went down there. Of course, both of my girlfriends were Catholic. I've been a Baptist all my life. So we went down there, and supposedly these I think it was 3 of the children that had seen the Blessed Mother. And one of them, I forget what his name was, he talked about it. But anyway, and this was so strange because apparently every night around 5 o'clock in the afternoon, the Blessed Mother appears to him, no matter where he's at, okay? So the day that we went there, it was the most horriblest day, pouring down, raining, dark. We went in there to Memorial Auditorium. Shoes were soaking wet, clothes wet. It was just a horrible, horrible day. Where we got in there, the priest spoke. They had 2 or 3 sisters, I think, that was from the Vatican that spoke. And they had a lady up there that spoke, and she was some kind of kin to one of the guys that had seen the Blessed Mother. Well, anyway, he went up to give his speech. Well, right before he gave his speech, okay, I had gone outside. Now, remember I told you it was pouring down, dark, horrible day. When I went out there, I was so upset I had to go outside and smoke a cigarette, okay? When I went out there, the brightness, the sun was shining. In fact, I could not even hardly see that sun was shining so bright. So I go back in, and the guy comes out, that the visionary that had seen the Blessed Mother, he came out and he said that the Blessed Mother has gave his blessings to all in the audience, and that the conversations he has had with her is more or less personal. Well, I have never got over that because something absolutely happened to my psyche, my heart and soul. And when me and my girlfriends were leaving, we got in the car and we practically didn't even know where we was, and there was no sound, no nothing when we was driving down the road. It was just like pure, total silence. And I've always thought, did the Blessed Mother spiritually, was she really there at that time? I'd like your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I'm surprised you haven't told me that story before, Diane. You tell me a lot.
Well, I don't know if I ever told Cindy. I know I told me and my girlfriends that lived through it. We was down there. We would talk about it, but we couldn't talk about it because we'd get upset. I think I told Raymond and I told Greg and Nick, about it. And of course, they just looked at me, like in awe. There really wasn't anything that they could say because this was coming from their mother. I don't know that I ever mentioned it to Cindy. I think I did mention it to Starla for sure. And I don't think Starla ever said anything. I think she just listened to me. But I'm kind of like your thoughts because there was a whole book written about this Medjugorje and these visionaries that had seen the Blessed Mother. Plus, back in time, I think there was one appearance at Fatima, which was, I don't know, that was many, hundreds of years ago, I think.
It was like 1917.
Yeah, back then. And I think it was she became a sister in the Catholic Church, Sister Lucia. And she lived long enough and she finally wrote down that the Blessed Mother had given her some kind of miracles that was going to happen or something that was going to happen in the future. And, most all this comes through the Catholic Church. Okay. And, they are very much into the Blessed Mother, which I am too. She was the mother of Jesus. But I just kind of like your thoughts on, I don't know, your thoughts on this.
Yeah,
what do you think? Do you think that the Blessed Mother does come back and appear and has nothing but sunlight and shining, light so bright that maybe she does talk to these people?
Yeah. So for the record, for the audience, Cindy is referring to my mother, and Starla is referring to my now deceased grandmother. So when you're mentioning that people's names, as far as Marian apparitions, which is what those are called, there's a lot of them in history. Medjugorje is one you said, Fatima. I think most of them, from what I can tell, I hesitate to take them because I think people can get in frenzies of excitement, and sometimes people can hallucinate. It just depends on the circumstance. And one thing that bothers me with these cases is that a lot of them are inconsistent. So sometimes Mary will be wearing white, sometimes she'll be wearing blue, sometimes she will look Latino if she's appearing in Mexico, but if she appears in Europe, she looks white. So I guess you could say that that's kind of just based on expectation. So people might be seeing what they want to see. But that being said, there are a few cases that I can't explain and that I don't really know what to think of. The most impressive one to me is one that happened in Egypt in the 1960s. You can look it up. It's called Our Lady of Zeitoun, Zeitoun. And what was interesting about that one is that what was believed to be the Virgin Mary appeared on top of a chapel in Egypt. And this was seen by thousands of people. And this was photographed quite a lot for several years. And she would appear on there a couple times a week sometimes. And the Egyptian government investigated this, and they went all around, and they could not find anything causing this light that appeared on the chapel. So we still don't know what caused this light. So that one's interesting to me because I just don't really have a good explanation. And although I'm not a Catholic and it doesn't really agree with my theology, I also don't want to be overly dismissive. So that's my thoughts. I didn't know if anyone else had anything to comment.
Yeah, I would say again that these are like case by case basis. I think you gave a really good example there, Caleb, because I saw those pictures too, and it was a very interesting story. I don't put a limit on God when it comes to, what he does, and if he decided to show his mother to a bunch of people, then that's fine if there's that element there.
And what's interesting in that case too is that Zeitoun, Egypt, is traditionally in the Orthodox tradition ascribed to, because in Matthew when they're fleeing from Herod, they go to Egypt for a couple years. That's where Orthodox Christians believe that they went to in Egypt was Zaytun, or at least what was modern day Zaytun. So the idea of Mary being there has a lot of theological significance if this is where they were living during Jesus' childhood. So
yeah, it's very interesting. I also again, there are some things that you said, Diane, that got me thinking, like, if there were prophecies or anything that were given to anybody, is there a way that maybe we can investigate if they came true, or if they've even, happened yet, or whatever, if there's some sort of way we can test that. That's one way we can tell false prophets, is by seeing if their prophecies come true. Bad news for them if they didn't back then, but that's just one thing I would put in there. But Tyler, you got anything?
No, I mean, I've seen the pictures that, Caleb was talking about, and I think they're extremely interesting. But if you would have asked me this question 6 months ago, I would have said, nope, not at all. Now, though, I don't know. God can do things. And again, who are we? I'm put it like this. You've caught me at a really interesting point in my life, Diana. I'm at a transition stage now, and where I'm becoming a little bit more open to other people's beliefs. Not that necessarily I agree with them or whatever. We can disagree at the end of the day and be perfectly fine friends and all that fun stuff. But I'm willing to listen, and I want to learn what people believe and what people think. And so now, like I said, I don't know. Is that possible? Yes, it is possible. Is it probable?
Yeah, and
you know what I mean?
Yeah. Go ahead, Dan.
Well, like I was going to say, this experience that I had, this was the only time that I'd ever had this experience, because I was raised strictly Baptist, okay? Most of my family, a lot of my family members were Catholic. They wasn't really strict Catholics, but they were Catholics. Mm-hmm. And I never really paid I paid attention to their belief, because me and my husband, he was Catholic. And we used to get our Bibles out. He had his Catholic missal, and I had my Holy Bible out. And we would look up different verses. And there was just different wording in our Bibles, but it all meant the same thing. Well, when I had this experience with the Blessed Mother, okay, I knew that she was the mother of Jesus, and to be, recognized as that, a virgin birth. But until I had that experience, I don't know, I don't even know how to explain it. It was just something that I felt in my heart. And especially when I come out and that sun was just beaming. It was just so bright you couldn't even hardly see. Plus it'd been raining all day. It just really kind of made me think, well, maybe she really does come down every once in a while. Why not? I mean, I just kind of wanted your opinions on it, because, you guys are, the ones that have studied all this. So I appreciate your thoughts on it, but I'm going to have to get off here. Okay.
All right.
Appreciate you
very
all
much.
right. Love you, Caleb. Love you guys.
Bye.
Bye. Yeah.
All right.
She will give me calls sometimes, just ask me questions, because she's a fan of the show, and
super nice.
She is very
super nice lady. Yeah,
she's very nice lady.
Very nice.
Oh,
so Real Seekers Ministry says Gary Habermas provides reasons for thinking that demon possession is a better explanation than reincarnation. For example, people are born before someone died, yet they report their memories.
By the way, why is he not on the show right now, Dale?
He's grading some papers. He explains it. There it is.
Yeah.
I'm grading too many essays.
He said that. Look at that.
I'm actually writing a priestess right now. I shouldn't be on here either, but I am.
Okay, so he'll be on here eventually, is what he's saying. He's just
Dale,
get your priorities together, okay? You're putting your work and stuff in front of your hobby of podcasting. How dare you? What's wrong with your priorities? No, she's a sweet lady, and that's good, because I have most of my family is Baptist, and that's her side has a little bit of Catholic in it, so it's kind of interesting seeing that.
Very interesting.
That dichotomy, but
that's the background.
Yeah, absolutely. And going
that's the back. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. And I like what Tyler was saying, even though I was cutting him off by accident, about like being open to other beliefs, because I've changed my mind on a lot of things in these past couple of years. And it's funny, because I'll see like atheists try to point to stuff like that. It's like, I look at this stuff that's a lot like the resurrection of Jesus. You can't explain that you're doing you guys a favor. Things. And they're like, you can't explain that. And it's like, yeah, but that's not, I would rather as a Christian, I'm in a better spot to admit that it was Mary than you are. Like that would, as an atheist, that would be even harder for you to explain. So
Right.
I don't think it helps your case at all. It only makes it even worse for you. If
Right.
I were to grant it, I'd have to change my theology a little bit, but I would still be in the right general religion where you would completely you can't grant that at all.
Well, like I said, there comes a point where if we're going to accept the supernatural, there is that point where, okay, now that we're here, we believe in the supernatural, and there are supernatural instances. Now we've got to be able to determine what those instances are, where they're coming from, and that takes that takes theology, that takes experience, that takes discernment. I mean, there's a lot of different things that it's like a subcategory. It's not in that realm of atheist versus Christian. Now it's in that realm of a theist, and how do I explain these type of things. So I do think there's areas of study for that. I mean, we do have demonology and angelology and stuff like that. We have these people that study these things. We also have people that study the paranormal in general, and they're not Christians, and they bring all this weird stuff to it. And that's one of the things I wanted to talk to Plato about, because it looks like he's part of a paranormal group, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, he knows. I think he knew Ed and Lorraine Warren. Well, I'm sure we'll ask him about all of that. Which, I mean, they were religious, obviously, but generally speaking. So again, tune in next week, guys, if you want to see more on that, because I think we're all looking forward to that show, because it'd be very, very unique. Because it's not every day you get to talk to an exorcist.
Can I just ask real quick, what was that movie? This is based on the real thing. I think Ed and Lorraine did the exorcism.
Annabelle?
No, Conjuring.
It's
part of the same universe.
Well,
we actually have a picture
the same universe, like it's Marvel or something.
Yeah, it's a horror cinematic universe now. Yeah, but there's with the picture the guy we're interviewing, I have a picture of him in front of the Annabelle doll, like the real one, not the one they use in the movies. Yeah, the real one's a Raggedy Ann doll. It's not a porcelain doll, but
there's a YouTube
and it's
video.
Big.
Really? Yeah. Really? Annabelle is
large.
It's a large doll, it's probably like it's probably
about 3.5 feet.
3.5.
Right?
It's a pretty big Annabelle doll. Yeah.
Can you imagine that thing like coming to life like Chucky? Just
Actually, that's what originally the reports
it's full of
were.
Stuffing. Don't worry about it.
Right.
Yeah, I believe that I'm trying to think of the original. Well, I'm sure I'll ask him about that. But the original case. Now, the movie Annabelle is not even trying to be based off the real thing. But the original Conjuring, the opening is when they're looking at the Annabelle doll, and a lot of that's pretty accurate. Because if I remember correctly, it was these college girls who got this doll as a gift, and they would come home from their apartment that would be locked, and the doll would be in different places, and they would have never moved it. And they would start getting messages written down, and they were concerned someone had broken their apartment, but they couldn't find any evidence for breaking in. Yeah. And so they were getting creeped out, and they consulted a psychic or medium who said, "Oh, this is the spirit of a girl named Annabelle. She's not really going to be harmful. She just wants to do that." So they kind of just allowed it for a while, but then it started getting more violent. One of the girl's boyfriends was over, and I believe he was asleep, and during his dream, he dreamed like Annabelle started moving him. He woke up, the doll was like strangling him, and he threw it off, and he found like these huge bloody claw marks on his chest. And so they go and contact Ed and Lorraine Warren, and they tell them that, and when they go there, they say, "This is actually not a little girl named Annabelle. This is a demon pretending to be a girl to get to you, and it needed you to invite it in. And so now it's latched onto you." And so they had to do an exorcism on the doll, and they have it locked up, and they get a priest to bless it every month. So I mean,
that's because their exorcism obviously didn't work. There's so many other stories. Yeah. There's so many other stories that are surrounded that doll, because those college students weren't the first people to own it.
Yeah.
It was made, it was somebody else's before it was theirs. I just know that they got it from somewhere, but it was older than that too, which is wild, so.
Yeah. Would you, I was asking other friends about that. It's like, how much money would it take for you just like as a bet, if I bet you $50 to just take it out and hold it or something to get a picture with it? Would you do it, or would you be too scared to do that?
Yeah.
It's like, do you feel Jesus is with you? You got Jesus with you,
right? Yeah.
Right. My stepmom's up, so that's her in the background.
That's all good.
We're meeting everybody's family members tonight.
Yeah, that's right. She didn't say hey. But I wonder why a doll, though. I mean, just kind of sitting here thinking about it, like, why would a demon latch on to a doll. Like, is this a real thing, or is, you know,
Mhm.
something else going on here?
Well, all you can do, like I said, you have to take it by case basis. You have
Yeah.
to look at the cases in which this doll was part of, and there are a lot of weird things that supposedly happen around this doll.
Sure.
A lot of paranormal investigators swear that attachments can, you know, latch on to objects. You know, so why not? You know, I could see it as a possibility. I don't
Yeah.
know for sure, you know. I'm skeptical.
I
but,
find it really interesting, man. There's a quote, and I'm sure you guys know who Aleister Crowley is, right?
Yeah.
And it keeps running through my head. And he was referring to, you know, aliens, right, or angels, as he called it. But he said today they call them angels and demons. Tomorrow they'll call them something else, right? And we have. I mean, now it's aliens and ghosts and stuff like that. And so it's just, I don't know, it's interesting to me to see the evolution of that. But at the same time, is just a question for you guys, just real quick, is like ghost, is that something that like an atheist would talk about, or is that something that's, you know, not in their worldview? Does that make sense, or does it just depend on who like you're talking to, like a materialist or whatever? Just out of curiosity.
Do you want to go first, David?
Yeah, go.
No, I said, do you want to go first?
No, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, it depends on the atheist. I mean, if they're a materialist, then they would kind of have to be, unless they believe it's some kind of weird projection of the mind or something. But I mean, there are paranormal investigators who believe in ghosts, who don't think that there's. I mean, they can believe in afterlife and not God, which is a little inconsistent. But whatever, you know, I'm not gonna sit here and try to poke it. But yeah, it's weird because a lot of Christians try to say that ghosts are demons, and I don't think that's always the case. I don't see any issues. I mean, even in the book of Samuel, Samuel's ghost is summoned by a medium when Saul does it. They think Jesus is a ghost in the New Testament. Peter's mistaken for a ghost in Acts 12. So I mean, it was a common belief in Judaism that there were spirits of the dead in Gehenna or Sheol or whatever you wanted to consider, and then they kind of wandered around until the resurrection. So that intermediate state before the judgment, before the second coming, when we're not resurrected, where are we? And that's what we don't really know. So I'm not. Now, I do think most cases of ghost. I mean, I agree that we should do this case by case. So if someone told me they thought they saw their dead relative, I would be like, okay, you know, you could be hallucinating. People grieve. That certainly happens, and I think that's more likely than not. But there are cases in which you will have groups of people saying this. You have cases in which they give information they couldn't know. I'm trying to think. There was one that Michael Kona talked about one time of a woman who was in cardiac. I think she was dying in a hospital, and she appeared to her, but she had a dream that she was in a bar and that she saw her son, and then suddenly, so she wakes up and tells him like, "Oh, I had this dream when she was resuscitated." Her son comes back later on and explains like, "I thought mom was in the hospital," and they're like, "What do you mean she was?" He's like, "No, I saw mom walking in this bar next to me, and they described it the same way, and this was at the same time too, like the same time of day when she had this."
Oh, wow.
So you have these really weird correlations where it feels very hard to explain that coincidence. There's also something called Christ apparitions, where these will appear to people as they're dying. So like one example would be, and this is a real example of like a girl or a woman whose brother is off fighting the military, like he's fighting overseas. She wakes up at 3 a.m. and sees him standing over her bed saying like, "I love you," and then he vanishes. Next day, she finds out that he died that night at 3 a.m.
Wow.
And that was the correlation. So you get a lot of these where they see them the exact same time they died, and they didn't know and they didn't find out they died until later on. And it's the same date, same time. Yeah. So it's like, you know, when you hear so many of those, it's hard to think that's just a coincidence after a while. It's like, maybe there's something more to that.
Sure. There's a little bit of truth in the legend.
And then we see that there has to be some sort of evidence, right? Which I look at and I think is pretty wild, because you know, you do have these now, you know, we might not take a lot of stock in some of these ghost shows or these paranormal investigators and stuff like that. We might not, but there's things that have been captured on video, like you said the Virgin Mary was captured by photograph, you know, and some of these guys, they really believe in this stuff. Now, I do think that, you know, some of it's for show. obviously. But what about these guys that aren't doing it for show, that are actually trying to record things and they capture things? What
Right.
do we just throw out all that evidence based off of our own theories, or do
I don't know.
we actually need to really investigate it? And I think that's the key, is investigation. Like Caleb
Yeah.
said, the disciples, they believed in some sort of like ghosts. They believed in ghosts.
The
Or they had
concept
an
was there.
idea of it.
Yeah. The
And
concept was there for sure.
the concept was there, and there's a reason the concept was there. Right?
Exactly.
So
But here's the thing too.
But you think about this
Yeah.
too. One more thing
Yeah.
is that we all know somebody that has had an experience with the paranormal, with the ghost. All right. I've had several friends, several family members that attest to this. I've got and these family members and friends, I have no reason to distrust them.
Yeah.
It's a personal experience, and it
I've
could
got
be
one.
this, it could be this, it could be this, it could be this.
Yep.
However, when they all start lining up, or like some of the stories are like the same thing, and I've always told people, like, we don't know enough about certain things in the earth yet. We don't know enough about energy. We don't know enough about certain things, like a camera may flash and you may see that flash after it's done. What if like some sort of energy expelled, and it was so hot or so crazy that it imprints onto the land? I don't know. And of course, like I said, I'm skeptical because I haven't investigated it fully, but it's definitely something to speculate on.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And so, true story. Whenever I was little, and I want you guys to explain this one to me because I have no idea. And maybe it was just one of those, my mind projecting something, or I don't know. But hear me out. But this really happened to me. So I was sitting, and I remember it like it was yesterday. My mom had just bought me my first wrestling pay-per-view, right? I think it was still WWF. It was either WWF or just turned to WWE, right? And so I forget exactly which pay-per-view it was, but it was one of the big ones. It might have been WrestleMania even. But anyway, long story short, I was sitting there, and I remember this night because it was the first night I smoked a cigarette. But it was also the night that I heard my brother's voice. Now, my brother, I'm gonna say I don't remember exactly how old I was, but I was younger. But my brother had passed away, I think it was 96, so that would have put me at 6. So this was a little bit later. I was in, 10, 12, double digits. But anyway, I heard his voice, and as plain as day, Tyler, right? Just that was it. And I didn't hear it again, and I haven't heard it since. But it was loud and audible enough to where I heard, or I even told my mom, I said, "What?" I said, "Mom, did you call me?" And she goes, "No." But I heard it plain as day, Tyler, and it was just like it was right there in my ear. So have you guys ever experienced anything like that, or heard of anything like that, or what's going on there? I don't care.
It's all right, man. I would say, yeah, I've had experiences that I can't quite explain. Obviously, I could have sworn there was this one time I was working up on this old building. I was painting a gas line that they had just put in. And out of the corner of my eye, I saw what looked like a shadow person, right? I was like, "What?"
The hat man.
And and I was like, "Nah, these blackbirds, they're flying around here and this and that." But then I looked again. Stuff was walking, like sound like footprints, not like pitter patters of a bird, right? So
like a thump, like a thud, like
yeah. So when I looked over, I saw, like as clear as day, that shadow figure again. And at this time, like, is my eyes fooling me? Is it the way the sun is reflecting off the rocks or whatever, or whatever it could be, and you're kind of freaked out for a moment. Your hair stands up on end. You just don't know, So would I say that was a ghost, or was that a demon, or was that anything? I don't make that conclusion fully, but there are several people, Travis or Tyler, that hear disembodied voices. And some people, I mean, they capture it. And I'm a huge fan of those ghost shows. I love them.
Yeah, I do too, man.
Like 90% of them I don't think are real.
Yeah,
but they're just entertaining. But there are some instances that have me scratch my head sometime and be like, "There's no way you can fake that."
Are you saying people
Right.
make up stuff for TV to get views?
I
would
know,
never
right?
believe that.
I never believe that. No.
But
there are some things you look at and you're like, "Oh, that's kind of like
it's suspect.
that's suspect." It's like I don't know how to quite wrap my head around that one. But
yeah. And touche,
and I can't say with all those guys that they're all trying to just deceive the public. There's these guys I think they're believing it. So
no, that's the point I was going to make. Like UFO, videos, Bigfoot videos, even ghost videos, demon possession videos. There is a lot of fake, but that doesn't mean that not all of them's fake, right? Like there could be something legit that people capture, and I think people do capture it sometimes. The art, there's a lot of people that do this, but their task is to separate that fake from the real. But I don't know, is there anything that you guys have ever personally seen like real, like that you would like to share or that you're comfortable sharing about, or from whatever, like ghosts or anything that stands out in your mind anyway?
I personally have not seen anything that I would consider to be supernatural, miraculous in my experience. I do know people who have.
Yeah.
So I trust them at their word. And I'm generally a bit skeptical. So like with your example, if I was trying to be skeptical, I would say, well, people have auditory hallucinations. That's somewhat common. So
sure.
Although I can't prove that it seems like that we should generally go with natural explanations unless those aren't good. And so it's because I can't disprove that very well. If there's like evidence in specific cases where it's very hard to go with the natural one, the supernatural one might be better, but again, it just depends on the case. So I haven't done that, but I'm also like generally a bit cautious, even though I'm open to it, just because I know, I'm a fan of magic and other stuff, and I know what mediums and psychics and stuff do as far as getting people to do that. I've reenacted stuff like that before at parties. In fact, I was going to bring this up because have you ever seen these before? They're called spirit slates. They did these in the 1800s.
Yes. You put the two pieces of chalk in the middle, put them together, and then
this is how they would communicate. The blank slates is how they would communicate with the dead. Yeah, you typically have like your. This is very hard to do on camera. So you have your piece of chalk there.
So real quick, so seances, then what we would, in my view anyway, like it's kind of creepy, or what we just would distinguish as creepy. Like that was a party trick back in the day. That's what people did for entertainment back in the early 1900s, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, it was.
And so this was one of those tricks.
It was, yeah. Generally would lower it on, and I've gotten it stuck on there. But generally, it's like a mechanism where it would do it on there like that. Hold on, I'm trying to do it like that, where you would have it where it would say, I could make it David or Tyler, right? Ooh. And what it is, and this is I'd hate to spoil it for you, but there's like a magnet here that slides out that captures it. So it's hidden underneath one of these metal sheets. So you take that out and it slides out, and so you have it falls out, and so that's how you see the hidden message underneath it. So
can you see it while you're writing it then? Or is it like drawn up in front of you kind of while you're writing it?
It's like this. Hold on, I got the other one. Can you?
Yeah.
And so what happens when you put it on there, what they don't see, it drops like that onto it. And then so as you're putting it up again, so gotcha. when you would open it up, then you would see that. So it falls into it. But that's what they did in like the 19th century at a lot of parties, and that's kind of the same things. Not saying that all of them are like that, but certainly that's generally my go-to, unless there was something significantly different about that. So
those are cool. Yeah, now, how much does that cost, like on Amazon?
It wasn't on Amazon, actually. It was from an online store. I think it was like probably like $60 or something. So.
Okay. Yeah.
But now that I just showed you how it's done, just don't let them watch this video if you want to impress people.
Right. It's kind of like I don't know. There was this one magician I was watching Penn and Teller, Full List.
Big fan of Penn Teller, yeah.
Yeah, and they what was it? He revealed the trick while he was doing it, and I don't know. Basically, he was just like, everything's an illusion, and everything literally on stage, all the props turned out to be illusions. And I don't know. I'll link you guys to it, but it was
That's
just wild. But it is cool to see, magic and
Yeah,
things
and
like that, and to be entertained.
yeah, one of my favorite ones. I don't know if you know who Darren Brown is. He's a British mentalist. He's very good at what he does, and he kind of scares me sometimes by like how much stuff he can do as far as like hypnosis and stuff. But he really likes to he doesn't like psychics and mediums, but he's very good at impersonating it. So he's done things where he's gone up and he's done stuff with psychics, and they genuinely believe he is psychic because I mean he's just doing he admits he doesn't have any powers, he's just doing tricks. And he'll get people on stage and be able to do stuff that you wouldn't think that, they're just like, there's no way. But he had a trick where he was doing like seance stuff, and there was a doll, and he was basically able to get like the guy was, I think he was blindfolded. He was sitting down in a chair, and he had a like a thing like this. This is a guy pulled from the audience who wasn't in on it.
Oh,
and Darren like got the doll to point to, it was like a robotic doll to point to two letters, and the guy just kind of with his eyes closed is like this, just the hand moves the same time the doll's hand moves, and he's just writing stuff down. It's really creepy, like a possession, and it's like, oh, that's so creepy. So, and of course, that's not supernatural, but it's still really interesting how much the line is blurred there.
Yeah,
and certainly if he was less ethical, he could make people believe he was. So
sure, I mean manipulation. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That I love it. David, what are your thoughts on mentalism and illusionists?
Well, I grew up with magic. So my uncle was a clown that did magic at parties. He actually worked at the White House, did a lot of parties for presidents, and
no way.
He also blew up those animal balloons.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That was a big thing he was into, and he loved magic. His best friend is an illusionist. So I grew up around it. I thought always was fascinated by it. I thought it was pretty cool. But yeah, man, I don't have any issues. I mean, you're doing tricks.
Yeah.
So you think.
So yeah, think you're right.
Yeah.
But yeah, some of it's wild, man. Some of it's really good stuff too. Yeah.
What was
the best one I could do was, well, I did one like that at a party, but it was more than just that. It was a whole seance setup, and I had 5 people of 5 like obituaries, and they were they weren't really dead people, but I just got pictures off the internet. It's like, okay, we have 5 people we're going to talk to. You can I had the bachelor pick one. He did. The obituary showed up on my I had him hold my phone the whole time, and he had the gallery pulled up, and he picked one. He said, okay, go through the gallery, and he saw the screenshot of that person's obituary. Then we did the spirit slate thing, and then at the end of it, the folder that had the pictures the whole time, which was in front of them the whole time, we opened it up, and there was a letter inside it, and inside the letter was like a message from the person he had picked. So that was cool. But my favorite one was where I think I have it on Instagram somewhere. I'll have to find it. It's where I made a card. They picked a card. It disappeared from the deck, and then I cut it out of my side. And the more, not the video doesn't have it. The more recent ones, I try to get more blood in it and more effects. Of course, you get like a pocket knife and they're cutting it out, and there's a bunch of. It takes a long time to set up, but it's pretty fun. So I like the reactions that one gets.
Yeah. So what's your favorite tricks to do? Card or props or nothing?
Card is just most available. So I kind of prefer mentalism stuff.
Okay.
But it's also hard to make that not predictable, literally predictable, because that's the whole point of mentalism. Sure. But but I mean, it's variations. So actually, when I was at my mission trip in New Jersey, we had an open mic night where it was kind of like a talent show thing. And I did one up there that was I was trying to think, someone picked a card, but then I had, then the card disappeared in the deck. Then we had 10 envelopes that were sitting on the table that people were holding the whole time.
Yeah. And
then someone else had picked a number random. They had written, I said, write down a number from 1 to 10. And they wrote down I think it was 8. And so the person picked the 5 of diamonds. The 5 of diamonds was gone. They wrote 8. And we had the 10 envelopes up there. And it's like, okay, envelope number 8. Everyone else step back, open up your envelopes. They're all just pieces of paper. Envelope number 8 had the 5 of diamonds. Yeah. And that disappeared from the deck. So that one was cool. I came up with that one in 30 minutes. So
really,
different way. So that, it's
so you
kind
come
of
up with
like
your own
that.
Tricks then, or?
I try to. Usually they're based on other methods, but I don't like doing the exacts. I don't like, if I learn a trick, I'll do something else with it, or I'll combine it with something. I don't like just doing. yeah, I don't like just completely copying someone else's stuff. I got to do
Gotcha.
something at least a little bit.
See, that
original.
was the thing I didn't know. Like, there's some magicians that really they're not so much in it for the fame as they are is for the tricks, and they make tricks and sell them to different people, and all these different things. And I'm just like, wow, that is really neat to see all these. This dude put all of this creativity into this trick. It's like making music, almost like me as a musician. It's something like that, and I'm just like, wow, I didn't know you could do that. So, really interesting stuff.
It is, yeah. The last thing I'll say on the topic of magic before we move on to other theology stuff, because I know that's what the podcast is about. No, I'm kidding.
Question though, after this though, I do.
Okay.
That's related.
My favorite. Actually, I have a YouTube video uploaded on my channel that's called My Favorite Magic Trick of All Time. Hey, Larry, what's up?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
And in that, so I'll finish up what I'm saying. And that it's a David Copperfield trick from 2001. And that one's what's cool about that is that he throws a ball in the audience, picks people. They take pictures of each other in a Polaroid, write down their initials and all that. Then he disappears on a platform, and he has a supposedly a live stream from Hawaii, and he appears in Hawaii with the picture with the initials to show that he's there, and then he runs into the water to show it's not a green screen. So it's a really cool thing, and that one's just beautiful in the way that it's done. It's like, wow, that's really cool. But anyway, how are you doing, Daniel?
I'm doing okay. Very tired. Grad school's rough, but a lot of fun too.
Were you watching earlier when we were talking about reincarnation? Because I was like, oh, I wish I
missed it. I missed it.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on reincarnation, Daniel? You're more, so for the record, for people watching, Daniel has recently been studying a lot more Eastern religions, and so he's a bit more informed on this than I am. But
very uninformed, but still, yeah.
No, don't flatter yourself.
I've read a couple books, but not much. Yeah, I don't know what to do with it. Some of the cases are interesting, but again, it's very. It's sort of like, Caleb, you said this before in private discussions, like with miracle claims, it's like, it's one thing to sort of provide positive evidence or negative evidence for a case. It's another thing to actually, go through the entire body of literature and come to a conclusion and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah.
So that epistemically, it's kind of difficult to sort of know. And then also like, there's sort of questions about alternative explanations, whether one wants to take, some form of possession or ESP as a possible explanation for some of the cases and stuff like that, as opposed to normal skeptical responses, which would be either fraud or mismemory or something like that. So it's very difficult to evaluate. It's because theoretically you could have, like, say, a small child that possessed accurate memories of another person, but that wouldn't necessarily show that they are identical. And one example I always like using is from the film The Sixth Day, Arnold Schwarzenegger, where they're cloning folks. But before they clone a body, they take a memory scan of the person, like a brain scan, and then they download the memories into the new body that's being cloned. So that's the whole premise of the film, is that Arnold Schwarzenegger's character doesn't really realize that he's a clone until he sees the other person and they're sort of interacting and stuff like, or the other version of him, and they're interacting and stuff like that. So that brings up some interesting sort of metaphysical questions as well, like as far as identifying data and stuff like that. As far as like most of like the body of evidence, apart from like some of the testimonial evidence of like children and stuff like that, I don't think that most of the data is actually that compelling and stuff like that. I know like certain books talk about like birthmarks and stuff like that. I've any theory that has to rewrite, major biology textbooks and genetics, like that's problematic for me. Yeah, especially if you're going to be a dualist or something like that, you have to take into consideration sort of the mind-body problem and stuff like that. So I just think it just adds to that. Certain other ones that look at like past life therapy regressions and stuff like that, I think even Ian Stevenson, who did a lot of work in the 80s and stuff like that, came to a pretty negative conclusion on those. Just they're unreliable just because the power of suggestion is just so strong in those cases.
Yeah, that's nice.
That's not to really solve the issue and stuff like that. That's a lot of stuff to sort of deal with.
You're muted, David. You're just nodding. Okay. You started talking, and I didn't know if it was.
Yeah, I was just gonna comment. Yeah, it's interesting, the studies that they actually do have. I admit I haven't looked like heavily into it. So
yeah,
I think one of the main issues, just from my perspective, is that there's a lot of positive takes on it. And there's not a lot of access to good critical takes from people that, say that disagree or have, don't have a worldview that's open to it. Some might say that, they're just more open to it so they can go where the evidence leads and stuff like that. And I think that is an important thing to consider. At the same time, like one thing that I always really appreciate, whether it be philosophy or religion or New Testament studies and stuff like that, you have good scholars on both sides that are willing to sort of fight it out and stuff like that. Whereas in these sort of studies, like most of the critics that I've read sort of are along the lines of, say, a Joe Nickel type or something like that. So it's very much it's a strong presupposition of materialism, and that's what's driving most of their conclusions.
Isn't that Joe Nickel guy the guy who disproved the Shroud of Turin as a fake?
Yeah, he's done so much.
That's what Dillahunty said, at least. That's his friend Joe Nickel has demonstrated that it's fake. So I think that's his
yeah, words. Unfortunately, Joe Nickel had, like, even in the 80s, I don't think he read much on the Shroud, let alone some of the studies now. So yeah, there's better criticisms. If you want to be critical, go read Hugh Ferry on that.
As someone who's met Hugh Ferry, I would also agree with that.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting. I know Dale's lurking around in the comments section, I'm sure still.
He'll be here. I think he'll be here eventually. He's grading papers right now, supposedly.
Yeah, well, I was watching one of his lectures on sort of alternative hypotheses for the Shroud, and he sort of mentioned that Hugh Ferry was calling out another skeptic for denying some of the STRP investigations. It's just like, yeah, you're really trying to make this theory fit, so you have to deny some of the data, which is really interesting. And I think it really speaks well to Hugh's character.
Yeah, that is interesting. And it also means, like, I noticed that too, when people sometimes try to explain these things, they have to change the facts or dispute them, which, I mean, isn't always bad if you have basis for it. But you can't just say, well, we have to dispute this because it's not possible, and so it has to be this. And that's what's, if there is reason to dispute it, then that's one thing. But you can't just ignore it just because it doesn't, unless that's what the difference is. Like, Daniel, I'll have to send you a link. There was I was reading some comment section that was giving a criticism of the Barbara Snyder case, which I know you like, and it was kind of an elaborate hypothesis about remissions and stuff like that. And although I don't buy it, reading it, I was like, I think they're either ignoring parts of the story or they're changing certain parts of it to make it suit it, when it's like that's not really accurate, or they're just saying, well, people might have misremembered this, or this might be exaggerated or something, where it's like, it's not really falsifiable at that point. So
yeah, and I think, like, this is where, like, cumulative cases really are helpful and stuff like that. I know, like, you're working on a book right now dealing with the subject and stuff like that.
Shameless plug, I know.
It's going to be a good book. I was just rereading some of the chapters, and that's sort of the thing that sort of hits me over the head. Same with other sort of evidences that are generally given by to sort of, like, I know Habermas uses NDEs and stuff like that. It's not just one case that you have to deal with. It's a whole body of literature. And just finding one outlier that you can sort of sweep away doesn't necessarily do you much good. You have to try and take this as a whole and stuff like that. Yeah. Now outliers can be very much informative and stuff like that. You can learn a lot from them, but, like, they can't just be taken as, like, a dogmatic standard.
Right. By the way, if anyone's interested in NDEs, I would highly recommend this book. It's a called The Self Does Not Die. It's a very extensive collection of cases, and they go into the implications, and they have a chapter on skeptical responses and stuff like that. So highly recommend it.
Right on. Does anybody else?
I was gonna say, I know we're waiting on I know a couple people who might be coming on later, like closer to 9 p.m. Eastern time. So I don't know. They're having dinner right now. So I didn't know if you had anything that you wanted to bring up, David.
Well, I like the whole idea of talking about ghosts because it's pretty interesting. Yeah, especially around this time of year. But yeah, man. I mean, we covered most of that, I think. So,
are we still doing a show on Christians and horror movies?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's on the 30th.
Okay. So I guess we won't get too much into that right now, because I was going to just I'm actually going to see Halloween Kills tomorrow. So I don't think it'll be that good, but I'm still looking forward to it.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. Daniel, I was watching The Omen last night too, which we were talking, because Daniel wants to be a composer. And so we were talking about the score to that. So I think the score is better than the movie itself, but it's pretty. it was good. It's a bit slow, but I was like, okay, I can see.
Some people might agree with you on that one. So I know that's a pretty well regarded score. So
it is. I said this. Yeah, the score is better than the movie. I mean, the movie's not bad. It is a little slow. It's and hasn't like aged the best, but it's not like it's still like I like the concept of it. I think it's more of a drama than more of an interesting kind of drama thriller than a horror, but it's still a cool idea, and it was certainly original. Well, other than Rosemary's Baby, it was original for its time. But yeah, but does anyone else have any movies that they like, or if they the other one? I don't know, David. What's your favorite movie for Halloween?
That's hard, man. I'm an 80s guy. So I was born in the 80s, so I still love movies like The Monster Squad, Goonies.
Oh, so you do the lightweight ones. I thought you were going to say Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street.
Those weren't all that great. I mean, they were just like stupid.
I was going to say, Caleb, like if you want to watch a better version of Friday the 13th, if you want to watch a better version of Friday the 13th, just watch the original Psycho.
Or Halloween.
Another one was that was good was like I just mentioned. What was it? Silver Bullet, the werewolf movie.
Oh yeah, it's based on
by Stephen King. Yeah, that was wild. But I guess for Halloween specifically, like all-time favorites, like those are like my kiddie genres, right? Yeah. So, but I also like I would say horror thrillers. So like The Sixth Sense, I thought was really, really creepy, and that was good.
Although M. Night Shyamalan now is a bad director, but he used to be good.
He's a hit or miss guy, like Signs. I didn't like Signs or The Village when I first saw it, but after watching it a couple times, I was like, this is actually got some deep stuff in it.
But nobody has ever said that about Last Airbender or Lady in the Water or The Happening.
No. Yeah. So you got these horror thrillers. What's another? What was it? Devil's Advocate. I thought that was a great thriller. Have you
seen Quiet Place?
Yes, I thought that was a great one too. I like 1 and 2. I like both of them, but the first one was definitely original. And I like seeing original. I'm getting sick of the reboots, and I'm getting sick of the sequels of like Friday the 13th, Jason vs. Freddy, all those stupid ones. They're more slasher. They're in the slasher films anyway. They're more in the slasher category. But as far as like real horror movies, like The Exorcism is Emily Rose, I thought was really good. So yeah, man, those are like the ones that I like, like the ones that like
that is good,
make you pause and think, like wow, like The Sixth Sense. I mean, who knew, Yeah. I mean, you can figure it out if you're good with mysteries, but
Yeah, have you seen Shutter Island? It's not a horror movie, but that one has a good ending.
It was the one with DiCaprio.
Yes.
Was that the one? And he ends up, he's like, his wife killed his kids or something.
Don't say it out loud. Don't spoil the ending.
Come on, man. Who cares?
It's not. I don't think it's even that
they're
one.
Old.
No, don't spoil these 20-year movies. These older.
Yeah, but then you get ones like 13 Ghosts, and it makes you never want to watch a horror movie again. I thought the first Grudge was pretty good though.
I still have not. Wait, the Japanese one or the first American remake one?
I think it was the first American remake one. The
one
that came out in theaters like a long time ago. Yeah. So it was definitely The Grudge, the first one that came to the States. Okay. I thought that was actually pretty good. And the first, what was it? The first Final Destination was pretty wild. They got a little ridiculous with that, but
I watched that a while ago, and I was like, it bothered me that they just caught on so quickly, and they just bought the concept of, oh yeah, death's trying to kill us like that. Like they didn't question. It's like, yeah, it's totally real. It's like, really? Like you didn't have more of that first? And it's just one of those fun like early 2000s teen movies where everyone dies, but
yeah, yep. But
that film still makes me nervous to go to the dentist.
I don't think it was that. I don't think it was the first one, but there's one of I'm sure there's one of the films. There's one that involves laser eye surgery that made me scared to get that. I think it was like the 5th movie or something.
Yeah, I think the first one opens up with like a plane explosion or something like that. So like whenever I go to an airport, that's what I just immediately think of. I'm like, great.
I mean, unless you want to drive back to California from New York, you're probably gonna have to
right.
take a plane.
I mean,
yeah.
you do enough flights, you get bored of it eventually, but like it's always in the back of my mind. So
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a genius idea to make a movie where you're paranoid about everything. So it's
well,
that's nice.
I don't know about you guys, but growing up, did you ever go in a pool and just look for a shark? His jaws.
I probably have done that before. Yeah.
Whenever I
Tyler-
lived in Florida, I did.
Yeah,
Oh,
know,
that's just
Well,
justified.
yeah, that's
No, you know what
justifiable. You
gets
got
me-
gators there.
Yeah, but
so-
you know what's crazy though? Like, okay, so that wasn't like a big one. What was the biggest one for me when you're doing it like a pool in the summertime? We had a real deep pool. It was about 11 feet deep, and it was a private pool, so it was like one of the biggest in a backyard pools around. You know,
Yeah.
so what the challenge was is jumping into the deep end, start treading, close your eyes, and pretend there's no land in sight.
Oof, that's
That-
scary.
Is actually can trip you out.
Why do you want to be a masochist? Like, my goodness, that's terrible.
David, have you ever seen the movie Open Water? I think it is.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's immediately what I thought when you mentioned that.
And that's that movie actually was creepy when I saw it because it reminded me of that.
Soul Surfer. You ever seen that one?
Oh yeah.
All right, we're talking about scary movies, but
Well, I'm just saying. Well, she got her arm bitten off by a shark, bro. Like, that's scary.
yeah. So we're talking about our favorite horror movies.
Look, man,
What's yours, Tyler? Besides Soul Surfer?
Soul Surfer. That's my favorite scary movie.
Because you're
of all
from
time.
Florida, and so that's a real possibility.
That's right. It's a phobia. No, scary movie. So the one that really tripped me out was The Exorcist. I watched it for the first time whenever I was about 8. I was single digits on this one, and my mom and my stepdad went
Oh
to
gosh,
a Christmas
single
party.
digits. What's wrong with your parents?
Right? I know, right? I was 9 or 8, but anyway, my parents went to a Christmas party. And anyway, so I stayed up, watched The Exorcist, right? And it was like 3:00 in the morning, 4, it was late. And they came in, 6:00, 7:00, whatever. But I was scared. Like, I was shaking. I did not go to sleep. I waited for my mommy to come home that night. But The Exorcist really got to me. I watched it years later, and I finally conquered my fear of it. But yeah, The Exorcist was, up there for me. It was the one that got me.
Oh, yeah.
I need to ask next week the bishop if it's like if the Exorcist had the accuracy level of that. That actually is based off of it's loosely based off of a real story, although in the real case it was a boy and not a girl, and there's a couple things that were changed.
I was gonna say, what was the real story on that one?
And it ended in St. Jude. It ended in St. Jude Hospital, which was, I think, a hospital up north. But it started in DC, I think, and that's where the whole idea of like the steps came in, and you can go there and walk up the steps, and but there's not 144 steps like they say there was or whatever, so it wasn't the house they filmed it in was also the movie was, I think, was in DC as well, so that was interesting to see the actual house and stuff like that. But I'll tell you what, guys, we just to piggyback off the subject of ghosts and ghoulies and stuff like that. My family is actually in the Virginia historical ghost books that they publish in the region, and so we had this house, or not me personally, but my cousins have this house where it's actually the Virginia Historical Society has came in and helped us preserve it, because it was falling apart. But this house supposedly was haunted. It's actually built on some graves, and the graves are still visible from the road there. And there's a lot of stories we heard growing up about that house, people getting slapped and stuff like that. But I also heard it was part of the Underground Railroad. So there's a lot of history there that they have in Stafford. So interesting stuff, man.
There's a lot of places, it seems, that's associated with the Underground Railroad that seems to be haunted, right?
Yeah.
What's the most haunted place in America? Do you guys know?
Well, it's up. There's a running up for the Waverly place, which
that's where I live. It's in Louisville.
Waverly Hill Sanitarium.
Yep.
Yeah, that's where I live.
Hills. Yep.
Probably like 20-some minutes from my house.
The Queen Mary is supposedly pretty big.
Okay.
There is another insane
Man.
asylum in West Virginia that's pretty hot, and then there's a old hospital in Pittsburgh that was supposed to be really haunted. And then you got the individual houses like the Mark Twain house they think was haunted, the Winchester home.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Winchester.
Y'all remember that show Linda Blair used to host? Since we're talking about The Exorcist, the Scariest Places on Earth, she did that real creepy voice on it. Y'all remember that?
I don't think I watched it, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it used to be on like cable like every night. I think it was there for like 1 or 2 years or whatever. But I remember it. But she would, come on, all sweet, pretty and this, that, and the other, and then she'd creepy voice. And I'm just like, oh, you creep, like go away. Like, but it was a good show. Y'all remember it like this?
Yeah,
if you remember it.
Cool. Did you know that William Friedkin, who did The Exorcist, he a couple years ago he had a documentary come out about like he was following a real exorcist priest, and it was a documentary, and they filmed an exorcism.
Really?
Yeah. Now it got a little bit of controversy. I mean, because in the footage, the exorcism and the priest and stuff are all legitimate, so they're not actors. But in the footage, you hear her with her demonic voice, and it sounds very much like the multiple voices kind of like echo.
Yeah.
And people kind of under analysis kind of said this is digitally edited afterwards. And so although the other stuff is legitimate, it was a bit controversial because it looks like they had gone over and enhanced it when it's like it's supposed to be raw footage. You don't do that. So the credibility is hurt a little bit there. But I thought it was an interesting idea to see for a concept. It's called, I just googled the Devil and Father Amorth or Amorth. I don't know how it's pronounced. But yeah, I thought that was an interesting. It's
idea. Wild how voice changes, in demonic cases, demonic possession cases. Like
you can find. No, sorry. Well, because I mean, David mentioned the Exorcism of Emily Rose, and you can find on YouTube the tapes, the audio tapes. I don't think it's a video. Of her. Now, some people say the priests were actually arrested, I believe, in a mistrial because of like abusing her or neglect and stuff. So some people think
the case was dropped. Yeah, the case was dropped, I believe.
Yeah,
really.
They said she had schizophrenia or epilepsy or some kind of mental disorder.
That's where the controversy came in. Was that did she have the schizo or did she not? And supposedly there was a lot to it with the court case. I can't remember all of it. I used to know it like the back of my hand because I watched it so many times, so. Oh wow. But that was when I was younger. But it's interesting, by far an interesting case, to be sure. But and that's where there's that fine line, where when it's mental health versus something that could be supernatural.
Yeah. So. I mean, because I think we have to say that there is that aspect. Don't get me wrong, there is mental illness, but at the same time there is demonic possession. So where is that line? I mean, can we draw it using different methods or whatever, or is this something that someone spiritual has to recognize, or not even like an exorcist, like we're all saved, right? Can we recognize this if it's real demonic possession? Is there some kind of element, some kind of variable that we can distinguish?
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
You think so? Because David, like you were talking about, I mean, I won't go into great detail, but you told me to look at somebody's eyes one time, and there was that I could see it in them that something was off. You know what I mean? Like I don't know, just a thought. But anyway,
I think that I know in Cameron's interview they discussed this, so I'm sure we can ask Bishop Angelicus when he's here. But from what I understand, that the Vatican has like guidelines where the person has to see a doctor first, and they have to see a psychiatrist, and then they move on. But there typically are a couple of signs of someone being possessed versus just mental illness. Stuff like abnormal strength would be one. The ability to speak in a language that they did, which is called xenoglossia, that they didn't know. So if someone starts speaking Latin, and again, this is not just like they're
kind of like tongues.
Yeah, sometimes they'll be speaking in an accent and it sounds like it, but they're just speaking gibberish. And so if a person is fluent in like a lot of priests are fluent in Latin, and they can I actually know of cases where the person was I think a German woman who was speaking Latin during her exorcism, and she actually corrected the priest during the exorcism on some of the incantations. She's like, it's pronounced.
No.
She was correcting them on how they pronounce some of the Latin words, which is kind of funny. The other one is a aversion to religious objects, and what's interesting about this one is it's not just seeing a Bible or like holy water, because people who are faking or who are mentally ill, they could still react to that and think it's real. But what they do is they test it by having sometimes they'll have holy water and non-holy water, and they'll spray it. And what they'll do, if the person only reacts to the holy water and doesn't react to the regular water, then that's a sign. Whereas if they're screaming no matter what you put on them, that's like, well, that might be it. Same with they'll sprinkle certain objects with holy water and certain ones with not, and then to see, can the person tell the difference? And if they can, that's a sign. Whereas if they can't, then there's different ways to be clever.
Test to record, you know what I mean, to see that actually pan out. Wow, interesting.
Yeah,
levitation would be another one, because I mean at that point, it's like, that's
definitely
mental illness.
So we're here with
that one
let's welcome Dale to the podcast.
What's up, guys?
Hey, thanks for inviting me and distracting me from those essays, incessant essays.
Did you get those papers graded?
I did about 2.5 of them, and then I said I need a break. So
I gotcha.
Yeah, we're doing the students are doing for philosophy of religion. They're doing Anselm's cosmological argument, and a lot of them, I guess, did Google searches because they're talking about his ontological argument instead. So kind of off topic, but yeah.
Is their sole source the crash course videos?
I think so, yeah.
Those are pretty helpful though for like beginner level stuff. I think it's a good introduction.
I don't know, Caleb. Like, you should watch Ryan Mullins' interview with on the Analytic Christian, going over one of the properties of God. It was pretty funny.
I don't know. Did anyone else? Dale? Did you see? I'm sorry, not Dale. Daniel, did you see Dale's debate with T-Jump? All I did with Dale was I texted Daniel just saying magical pineapple, and I was like, that basically sums up the debate.
I have not, unfortunately, but I'll have to watch, because I'm very curious how he could how T-Jump can justify a tropical fruit being a necessary perfect being. So that's very interesting.
Well, see, it's just a label. It's not a pineapple at all. And again, I had to kind of like figure that out at first. Like, what are the properties? Because he just says, "Oh, it's a magical pineapple." And one thing, it took me a while. He basically is referring to a quasi great being. It's a real maximal great being minus a diminishment of some property. So he took away knowledge or consciousness from it. But it took me a bit to get there, because when you say magical pineapple, it's kind of misleading, as you thought, right? You're thinking of a pineapple. So yeah, I had to work that out a bit.
Yeah, it was interesting by far.
Well, Liz Jackson watched your show. I gave her the link. Yeah, so I was getting some good feedback from her on that. So yeah, she wasn't impressed with the magical pineapple. I'll just say that.
I mean, it's just a new version of the Lewis Wolpert, Bill Craig exchange.
Yeah. Yeah, and at one point there was the necessary square circle. I was just, I'm like, how
circles are necessarily square, as we know.
Yeah, I feel like this is just an issue with T-Jump's epistemology right now.
Yeah, pretty much.
I mean, is he going to deny classical logic at this point just to avoid the argument?
Pretty much does. He was arguing at one point that logically contradictory things are possible. So
see, what
doesn't mean they're also not possible.
What?
Wouldn't that mean they're also not possible? Can they both be possible and not possible?
Yeah, I guess if you sidestep classical logic, couldn't you just sidestep the law of non-contradiction?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, exactly. If you're saying that, but I mean, it just makes you're saying gobbledygook. You can't.
Yeah. Well, it's sort of like when folks complain about omnipotence, God not being able to do all things. Like, there's limits. And they complain that that's not omnipotence. It's just like, well, if that's your definition of God, that he should be able to do all those things and stuff like that, essentially be beyond, what we can demonstrate through like just standard logic and stuff like that, then you kind of avoid the issue of God, some of the other issues that people want to bring up with the logical consistency of God, like say the problem of evil or something like that. Because there's nothing at that point, you can't really object to it being God being logically inconsistent if you want him to do logically inconsistent things, because he's got to be beyond that.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So here's another thing that's kind of off topic now, but it got me thinking about William Lane Craig. And I haven't been following it as much as I should, because I've been, engrossed in doing crazy things in September and doing school and burying my mom and all sorts of stuff. But he's getting a lot of backlash recently.
The Adam and Eve.
And people are talking about him being a heretic, and I mean, they're just going off. Have you guys been following that at all?
Well, I've seen the atheist, like Pine Creek. He's getting a lot of joy out of this, and I guess he did an interview with Sean McDowell, and they're kind of taking it out of context and that stuff. But I haven't heard a bunch of Christian apologists aren't going after him. Sean, is there something like that going on, or are you just saying
young Earth creationists, basically?
Of course. Well,
and Calvinists, of course.
They went after him before the mytho-history thing. So
yeah, I mean, I imagine most of these folks are Protestants, and it's just, I don't know, discussing with or interacting with some Orthodox folks, it seems like a lot of the issues that generally get brought up in the origins debate and stuff like that revolve around a very Augustinian view of original sin. And since the Orthodox generally don't take that view, it's kind of interesting just to imagine, okay, let's sort of couch that issue of original sin and see what we can do without that, and see what we can do thinking about other ways to sort of think about why there's evil in the world and stuff like that, why there's death and stuff like that. I mean, you could always go with Irenaean type theodicy and stuff like that, and that's going to be completely different than what Augustine's doing. And then you sort of just extrapolate that and go to your origins sort of question, and it really is kind of interesting, some of the questions and discussions you can have once you do that.
By the way, if you want a good book on that, I would recommend Caleb Jackson's "Searching for Solution to Suffering."
See, I don't like
Christian
that
response
guy.
on the problem of
so
evil.
Pompous.
I've heard he's a heretic.
That guy's
but
definitely a heretic. So
I've heard
yeah,
he's a heretic. Yeah.
Yeah, Caleb, when are you going to
doesn't
send
believe
me
in the
that?
shroud? I mean,
Actually, Daniel, I shipped it on Tuesday, so you should be getting it next week.
Okay, I
and
appreciate
that reminds
by
me
the way.
too, Caleb. Did you get your gear yet, or did it come
I'm
today?
waiting.
No,
I'm waiting for it.
Okay, so it should be there in a couple days at least.
Did you do priority shipping or just regular shipping?
I think we just did regular.
Post
I'd have
office is
to ask
slow
the
right
wife.
now. It's okay. I'm still waiting. Actually, Daniel, Bram is supposed to be coming on right now. I think he's trying to. I sent him the link.
Okay. I had a question for you guys before.
Go ahead.
Go back to grading or something, but it is related to your guys' topics, because you're talking about ghosts and Halloween stuff, and so I thought an interesting theological angle would be because some people think that there was after Jesus conquered death or rose from the dead, there was a fundamental change or difference in what the afterlife entailed. The dead aren't all in Sheol. Now some people go to heaven to be with Jesus. Other people are in Hades or something. So I wanted to ask, in terms of ghosts and stuff like that, maybe there's that Old Testament example, but has anything changed in terms of how the afterlife operates, and what kind of difference, theologically speaking, did Jesus' death and resurrection deal in terms of how the spiritual forces of darkness operate in the world and stuff like that?
It's a good question.
Yeah, I'd have to think about that.
Okay.
I mean, I know
that's
that
deep.
Yeah, I know that there's the harrowing of hell, which is a doctrine that some people hold to, where Jesus went into Hades and freed the saints. I mean, it says that in 1 Peter, I think, right? So, I don't know if that changed the Old Testament dichotomy. I would be inclined to think that it does. As far as is Sheol still a thing? Do ghosts just wander now, or do they go to Hades and stuff? I'm not sure that Hades could just be a reference to wandering the earth. As a spirit, but I don't think we really know. And I don't think the experiences we read about in the ancient world are all that different than the ones you hear about today. And so my gut instinct would be to say not really. I think the resurrection changes that, but that's a bodily future existence and not a current, non-physical one. So I'm not really sure how the intermediate stage is affected by that.
Yeah, I was just going to comment, like, it's very difficult to sort of bring out like a full sort of view of what the afterlife is like, I think, from the biblical text. There seems to be certain threads and stuff like that, but to a certain extent, it seems to be...
Bram, why don't you just join in the group? Just come on, don't be doing that. Come on, join the chat. Don't stop watching.
Yeah, I mean, Bram, I'll just be honest. I don't know what Heiser's view is on that. One thing I will say though, any sort of question on like the spiritual world and stuff like that, and this was something for me that was very helpful when I was sort of engaging with sort of New Age sort of thought and stuff like that. Just because they wanted to look at like sort of hauntings or sort of NDEs and use that as or apparitions as evidence against the traditional biblical view of like the afterlife and stuff like that. And the one thing that was helpful was just listening to Heiser bring out all the strangeness in the Old Testament and the New Testament, just basically saying like, yeah, their worldview was way different than ours and way more open. So we shouldn't be as concerned about these sort of things. And just sort of let the sort of just focus on, you know, more the point of the New Testament is not to give us like an overview of that and like a full like you can't have like full map of like the seven heavens or whatnot that's going in, Paul, and there's huge discussion about what that really means and stuff like that. So it seems to be more of a focus on like how we relate to God, which I think is to me the more important question anyways.
Agreed.
Awesome.
Dale?
Do you know? Thanks. Oh, go ahead, Kevin.
No, I was going to ask, since you brought up Craig, does Craig hold to Heiser's view, or is it different as far as origins? Do you know if he discusses it at all, or whoever wants to answer that?
What was the question? Does William Lane Craig?
Does Craig like does he deal with Heiser's view? Hey, Bram.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, Bram. Nice to see you.
Hey, man. Nice to see you.
Thank you.
It's glad that you're finally on the show. We were trying to get you on for a while now, trying to to do like video responses and stuff. So we still got to set that up sometime.
Yeah, absolutely. What's I missed like a minute. What did I miss?
I was asking if Craig deals with Heiser's view and if he of Genesis and Origins, or how he, because we're talking about Craig's book on Genesis.
I haven't read his book. I don't remember. Like, I've listened to his Defenders series and stuff like that on it. I don't remember him tackling like Heiser's view specifically.
Yeah, I think the hard thing is that Heiser's view is a lot more open and stuff like that. He hasn't done like the John Walton thing where he's actually writing a book. Here's how it is. More, he's just looking at like certain typical obstacles to it and just saying like, yeah, the writer of Genesis didn't have our 21st century sort of expectations out of an Origins text, which is like a small part of Walton's thesis. Although, like, I know there's a lot of frustration with Craig's treatment of Walton just because he seems to not get it.
I have to agree there. I listened to Craig's Defender course, and his response to Walton was not that impressive to me. I mean, I'm no expert on the Old Testament or anything, but even for what I could tell.
Yeah, says the person who brings up Isaiah's scholarship, and we were talking about that for like 30 minutes. So Bram is, however, an expert on the Gospel of John and stuff like that. So if you ever want to find out about that, that's his area of study right now. I'm sure we're planning on working together, like us as a group, with Daniel included, and other people are planning on publishing sometime within, I don't know, the foreseeable future, a book on New Testament and resurrection, stuff like that. And so I think there'll be a fun collaborative work.
Spoiler alert! It's a Gnostic work.
Oh no!
Yeah.
Don't tell them. Yeah, it's completely heretical, all that stuff. Yeah.
Well, it's Caleb, so
yeah.
Wherever he goes,
we all know that the Gospel of John was Gnostic. Bram, come on, don't deny it, right?
Yeah, and composed in the 3rd century.
Yes, exactly.
P52 is a forgery.
Mm-hmm. Same with every copy of 1 Corinthians 15. That's
yes.
We got to pause it. Yeah, it's like the Euthmonic recension in the Quran. It's complete interpolation. Thanks, Price.
That's funny.
Dale, I don't know if you have seen Bob Price's response to the Shrouded Turin.
I don't know. It's not ringing any bells. What is?
Oh yeah, I sent that to Daniel. I remember that. No,
Yeah,
that
he was
my fault.
interviewed on Myth Vision, and it's pretty disappointing just because it's the typical trope that you see in like oh my goodness, I'm forgetting the Italian art historian that does the same sort of move where they first make fun of all the STIRP scientists and then just quote they just quote Garla Skelly and Joe Nickel for the scientific aspects.
Oh goodness, yeah, that seems to be the go-to things if you're going to do like a superficial assessment kind of thing and not get into it. Yeah, okay, I've got the talking points. Carbon-14, STIRP scientists are a bunch of what did the SNS skeptic Alan call it? The pseudo-scientific nutters or something like that.
Yeah, which I mean, at that point it's just name calling.
It's yeah.
I mean, these people have degrees and they're publishing in like peer-reviewed journals, right? So I don't know what's pseudoscientific about it.
I mean, these were the people that were working at the Air Force Academy, Los Alamos Labs, bunch of schools back east too. I mean, and to be frank, like you look at like a more honest like skeptic like Hugh Ferry, he's not avoiding quoting them, and he's going with like if he thinks he can push back on some of their findings, he's going to push back, but he doesn't on a lot of the key issues. So
if that's what I like Bob Price, by the way, but if that's where he's going, fair enough. Like he hasn't looked into it kind of thing in any degree or anything. So yeah, it is what it is. Sometimes people just aren't just interested in it and getting the depth of knowledge to speak on it, and they're asked about it, so they just have to give like a quick take or something. So yeah.
I think Dale Allison probably had my favorite sort of like brief overview in his last book. I know, Caleb, you sent that to me.
I also sent parts of it to Dale, but I don't know how much he read or could read it. So
it was hard to like the way it was scanned. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was taking a picture. I don't have it on like Kindle, so I was doing it from there. But I'm trying to see if I can.
Yeah, well, I just thought it was pretty, like most of it is just almost bibliography. So he was just like, this is what some people say, this is what other people say. I don't know at the end.
Here we go. Can you read the Shrouded Turin? That's all his footnotes. He has a lot of footnotes. He's still done all of his footnotes on there. He's quite a lot of sources. He has like 5 pages on it.
Yeah, it's very brief, but also in depth to a certain extent. I think the way he ends it is pretty fair, where he sort of goes like, yeah, I don't think it's the burial cloth of Christ, but I don't want to give a skeptical answer for saying how it was made, because I don't think that's very plausible.
He's saying he doesn't know how the image got on there, but he doesn't think historically that it's the burial cloth. So, yeah. Okay. Which is, I guess, an honest, a good.
Yeah, I don't think I don't know if he's, at least the way I read him, it sounded a little bit more optimistic. Just like basically it's not like an I don't like I know it's fake but I don't know, but just more like we can't really decipher it. You seem to be positing more mystery, and at least the way I was interpreting him.
Gotcha. Yeah, that sounds like the way Dale would be, kind of thing, in the trying to show both sides. And
you're just being optimistic because he's a fellow Dale.
He's a fellow Dale. Well, he's
a fellow Dale.
I like it. He's always been there to help me when I had questions and stuff. So.
You need to see if you can get him. I know you originally tried to ask him on your show and he didn't do it at the time, but he's been on a lot more shows since, so you can maybe try reaching out to him again. But I don't know.
I was thinking about like when Mike Mike had him on the show and he was telling us, but at the same time I know that he doesn't like doing them, even though I guess he's being forced to do it. So I don't know.
Well, he's done a lot more though. I think he's gotten now. I would guess. I don't know if he's being forced to now that Mike Lucona want to open it up, because he's been on several more shows in the last couple of months. So maybe he's more open to it now. But I guess you could.
I'll ask him again, but I'm just hesitant about like pushing people. If I know that they don't like doing that, then it's not like, hey, I saw you on Mike, you got to come on mine. So
yeah, I understand. That's understandable. Yeah, but yeah, you don't want to. You certainly don't want to press them. But yeah, he's pretty good at answering emails. I think Daniel was bringing up Myth Vision. Derek Lambert he actually drove to Princeton to interview him in person, and he was doing like for Patreon members, and I'm not a Patreon member. He's like, you can ask him a question, so I got to write out my question, and apparently Allison answered it. I haven't seen the video yet because he hasn't posted it, so I'm excited to see that.
Awesome. I feel bad though. I got to ask my question. I was about to head out in a couple minutes, but Bram didn't get to ask his question. He had to leave.
It's okay. Bram and I talk all the time. I'm sure he'll ask it in the next couple of days.
Yeah, no, that's always pretty lively. Our discussions with Bram.
He's our New Testament guy typically.
So, Dale, I do have a question for you. Other than grad school, what are you working on right now as far as like content?
So like podcasting content or whatever.
Yeah, just whatever. Like, what your main focus is. Any sort of studies or any plans coming up?
So obviously in terms of like podcasting immediately is I'm supposed to get in touch with Gary Habermas to organize the show, a new Shroud Wars debate between Gary and Hugh Ferry. So as I said, I invited you to be my co-host for that, Daniel, because you're into the Shroud, so you'd be great as a co-host for that. I also was in touch with Dr. Asha Lancaster Thomas. I haven't heard back from her. She agreed back in the summer to come on the show. She wanted to talk about pantheism. And I was also hoping to include like the evil God challenge because she's as an atheist philosopher, she's like an expert in that area. And I have on November 9th, I have Dr. Shabir Ali coming on for to talk about numerical patterns in the Quran, which is, I actually think that's the best argument in favor of positive evidence in favor of Islam. There is actually a time, you probably know this, Daniel, if you listen to my shows, I don't know, but there was a time for a couple months in November and December, due to those evidences, the specific numerical patterns, the symmetrical ones, where it was looking to me that Islam was true and that I was going to become a Muslim. So I think that there's something there with that. So in the end, obviously it fell through. I didn't think that they could prove it because I analyzed that through the lens of specified complexity. And when they're trying to establish the complexity aspect, they don't really go through, okay, well, what are the specificational resources? They have like tons and tons of specificational resources that they utilize, and there's just no accounting for what the probability with that is. It's probably like 100% that they'll find something. So yeah, based on that lack of evidence, that's why I kind of said, yeah, you can't prove your case on a balance of probabilities.
I think my biggest concern would just be the textual history, just because I know that textual criticism on the Quran is a lot more in its infancy than, say, biblical textual criticism. And this is sort of remind me of like the main criticism that Heiser brings up against like the Bible codes that were very popular in, say, the 90s and stuff like that as a proof of the divine origin of the Bible. His main complaints is like, when they look at, say, the Masoretic text and say that you can find these correlations in the Masoretic text, what they don't tell you is that there's not one Masoretic text. That's just a generic term. And, you got to deal with the variance in the texts.
Well, believe it or not, I'm not sure that that's a valid thing with the Quran, at least in terms of the numerical pattern. So Shabir Ali, he fully agrees about the textual preservation of the Quran. No, Muslims don't use that as a positive evidence in itself, right? But with the numerical patterns, it's a specific version of the Quran only, the 1924 Egyptian version that 80% of the world's Muslims read. That's the Quran that has the proven numerical patterns, or that's the text they use to try and make their case. It's not necessarily other versions or the other translations of it or something like that. So
I would still have a concern though, just because it is debated like how reliable it is. At least my understanding of it is like there's like the Warfs and there's a couple other sort of contenders for like sort of lesser popular Qurans that do vary quite considerably on that. The main concern I would have with that is that it seems almost arbitrary. We're picking out this one version. It'd be like saying, I'm going to take the 1611 version of the King James and say that's where it is. Beyond that, I do wonder, like maybe if, say, Andy Bannister's sort of thesis regards to the oral compilation to the Quran might actually have some interesting implications for that type of argument. Just because what he argues is that, like, really what the idea of an illiterate 7th century prophet sort of composing on the spot actually fits really well with our cultural background. What we know from, say, like take stories of like some of the Homeric epics and stuff like that, and how they were composed and stuff like that. And he, in some of his computer analyses that he was doing, just looking at how he could find like sort of compositional devices and how well it actually correlated to some of his studies and stuff like that. I wonder if, just because they have to take a strong dictational, well, I think Shabir, I'd have to ask Shabir on this because I don't know exactly what his view of inspiration would be. But generally in Sunni Islam, they take a strong dictational view.
And he does, yeah. And I think that's an interesting point. I looked at that as well. Shabir mentioned that. So in addition to the numerical patterns, there are also these poetic patterns. So the scholar that Shabir likes as the best on that front is, I think his name is Raymond Farron. It's been a few years, like 2017. Raymond Farron, who has a book about the poetic patterns, and Shabir was trying to argue that, well, there's this combination that makes it even more improbable, but the poetic patterns, just, I found them completely unconvincing. These are duplicated in, I mean, they're in the true Furkan, for example. That's a great comparison naturalistic text that you can use.
Yeah, I was going to ask, because I've heard Mormons make similar arguments about, well, there are these Semitisms and there are certain patterns and there's no way. And then there's studies that compare that and they compare it to regular works and it's no significant difference. So I guess the question is, have they taken these same analyses and have they compared them to other works to say, look how different this is? Because if you can find similar parallels in other texts, and it's not nearly as impressive as far as, these can't be replicated or something.
They're everywhere. Yeah, in terms of the poetic patterns, they're everywhere. It's in the Bible.
Even the numeric patterns I don't think are that unique, are they?
Well, I will say that they're not totally unique. So Shabir Ali will present 5 categories of it, right? So I only found one category. I think that there's been a lot more work. There's been a lot more development on trying to find these in the Quran compared to like Bible codes or something like that. But that doesn't mean that those similar patterns aren't there, or that if somebody did submit the same level of work that they would find their own patterns, because I mean, you can submit any specification you want. There's almost unlimited specificational resources. So like I tried copying basic things. I'm not a mathematician or something. I kind of begged Shabir, like, let's go to U of T. Do you have connections? Let's get someone to actually calculate this. But obviously that didn't happen. But some patterns I was able to duplicate some patterns in ordinary naturalistic text. I used the true Furkan, for example, because that's exactly the same as it's made to be like a mimic of the Quran in Arabic or whatever, and that sort of thing. And I was able to find some patterns. I wasn't able to find all the patterns that they had. But again, that's just random chance because there's no reason. They haven't justified the specification that they're giving. So there's other patterns that the true Furkan would have that they wouldn't. And I could say, wow, look at this or something. So
yeah, that is another concern. Is just like, how are they, like, how do you know you have a code or something like that? I think like I've heard in like discussions with David Wood, like he mentioned the number 19 and stuff like that.
Yeah, those are no good.
Yeah, and for me, it's just like, well, it's sort of like sort of almost parallel to certain lay Muslim sort of arguments that you could find correlations in the Old Testament, because you can find all, sometimes texts seem to use the one of the names of Muhammad or one of the names of Allah, and you look at, like, you ask them, like, well, how many names do they have? They have 99 of each. It's just like, at that point, it's it's not very surprising at all that you might find some overlap, especially given, like, when we think about God, like, you can find terms that are going to be shared.
Right.
And just because
especially when they're so heavily reliant on each other too. I mean, it's not as if the Quran is independent of the Torah.
That's the other big issue. It's just like we know like certain stories or retellings of, say, New Testament or Old Testament figures and stuff like that. They derive from, sort of rabbinic texts and stuff like that. These aren't sort of like
Gnostic texts.
Yeah, exactly. So it's still like, it seems odd that if you're going to take a strong dictational model that God would seemingly not actually, get the stories right, or at least seem to force you to take a historical view of texts that seem to have far less historical value than the New Testament.
Welcome back, Travis.
Yeah, thank you.
I think you banged the nail on that. I mean, don't forget, there's got to be those positive and there's also negative evidences as well that you have to consider. And with Islam, there are plenty to choose from on the negative side. So
I mean, and I know Caleb and I have discussed these before, like going through the hadiths and stuff like that. It opens up a whole can of worms as far as like the figure of Muhammad, his actions and history and stuff like that. Huge avenues that you can go down. Whereas, like, I think, Christianity is like one of the few world religions where I think like our central figure is like grabbed by everyone. I think like everyone in like some worldview has tried to claim Jesus as their own at least once.
Besides Hector Avalos.
Well, besides Hector Avalos, but I'm pretty sure even Richard Dawkins sort of said like someone as smart as Jesus would be an atheist.
Which is weird because he wasn't.
I know he's not being serious there, but there is this sort of sentiment like that Jesus is one of us, whereas like we don't do that. Maybe that's just because we're still very, influenced by our Jewish roots, have no other gods before me and stuff like that. But it is interesting.
Yeah, I do think that's an interesting observation. Yeah, Jesus is kind of got a special place. Like everybody wants to own him or adopt him and mold him into their own kind of thing. Except the Jews.
Right.
Like, I don't think they would want to.
Well, there was a movement in like some of the counter missionary groups like a decade ago trying to say that we can figure out who the real Jewish Jesus was. Granted, they had to take a very ahistorical view of like the New Testament. They had to sort of say that those were all written in the 4th century and stuff like that. It's sort of like where Muslim apologetics were also like a decade ago, and so they had to sort of blame it all on the Nicene Council.
Those dirty Niceans.
But I just from my study of like Eastern religions, like you see that constantly with them. Hindus claim him as an avatar. Buddhists claim him as a Bodhisattva. So it's very interesting. I mean, like there was even a BBC documentary trying to claim that Jesus was like a Buddhist monk and taught Buddhism. And then all you have to do is like literally read his teachings in light of Second Temple Judaism, and you go, oh yeah, there's no similarities.
Or he moved to Japan afterwards.
That's hilarious. Yeah, I mean that's such a huge thing though, because you look at the Jewish culture in that time era, and they wouldn't have had these foreign concepts,
Or if they did,
probably didn't. I don't think they knew I don't think they knew Buddhism existed. I doubt the disciples would have ever even heard of Buddhism.
Mm-hmm. I mean, if there was any sort of interaction, because we do know that there was trade routes to like the Far East and stuff like that.
I mean, Thomas was in India, but yeah.
Yeah, if there was any cultural exchange, it was minimal. And then we just got to like, you can't say this, just this is an overgeneralization, but when we do look at the Jewish culture in first century Palestine and stuff like that, you do see a very conservative sort of reaction to say like, because they're constantly dealing with Greek and Roman pagans. Yeah. There are Hellenized Jews, of course. Like I think Philo adopts a lot of Greek and Hellenized philosophy.
Yeah, stuff like that. Egypt too. So that's part of the
exactly.
Reason.
That's the point. Is that while there might be some diversity within Jewish thought in the first century and stuff like that, it's not enough just to say, well, some Jews. You actually, have to actually look at Jesus's movement and teaching and stuff like that, and see how well it compares.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Anyone, I think we're going to close this out in a few minutes because we've been going for almost 2 hours now. Does anyone else have any other thoughts, comments, questions, hate, remarks, anything like that?
I just think that's he brought up a really good point. When we look at all these, different claims, especially these exotic claims about Jesus, well, we got to look at the culture he was in and the time period he was in. And I think a lot of them just don't really mesh up too well with, the Second Temple Judaism and all the stuff that's going on.
I mean, all the pictures I've seen have him as a white European guy. So
Right.
where are you getting the Jewishness? I don't know.
Well, come on, Caleb. We know he was at least 5'10" because
that's where the shroud
he
is.
Had he had a ponytail. He had his beard plucked. Come on.
I don't know. The guy in the shroud's like what, 6'1" or something. I mean,
I think that's outside. Dale could probably correct me on this, but I think that's on the extreme end of some of the measurements.
Yeah, that's not his actual height. That's there's stretching of the cloth and stuff like that. So they estimate him. I forget, the Jewish measurement is in L's or something, and I forget what it is now. Or something, but
he would have been
5'10", 5'11".
I'm glad that Dale is using foot and not, because even though he's Canadian, it's like you're having to use for us Americans, you're having to use our system. We've broken you.
Well, to be fair, all his sources also use feet because it's a lot of the Americans that are writing on this.
That's probably true.
I don't even know what he is in meters, so that's a good point. Darn it, you converted me. I can't.
No. Literally converted, and conversions.
What's interesting that I'm starting to study in my spare time is like the Second Temple Jewish writings. Like, I think it's so fascinating because we can kind of see how, they interpreted the Old Testament. We can see how it kind of leads into the New Testament and like their mindset at the time. I think, the Second Temple era is like one of the most fascinating times in history. It like connects the two testaments.
I've always been drawn to that period, like the 100 BC to up to like 100 and the end of the 5 good emperors, I guess, like 185 AD. That's kind of like my favorite period in history. Right.
So it's really interesting, like looking at all these writings, and I'm loving it so far.
Well, Dale, you interviewed David Instone Brewer, correct?
Yep.
So I bet he gave some great insight on sort of the Jewishness of Jesus.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, he did. Yeah, definitely. About like rabbinic sources and stuff like that. So.
He also has like a really cool sort of test article on like miracles in demon possession.
I've read that one.
Yeah, it's hard. It's very hard to find, but when you can find it online, it's always a good.
Are you taught Jesus and the Psychiatrist? I think. Yeah. I've read that one. That's a really cool story. I need to ask the bishop if he knows that one. From what I remember, to give the short version, I believe he was with a psychiatric. He used to believe that the demon possession was, even as a Christian, was mostly mental illness, and that's what the Bible is referring to. But he was with a psychiatric patient who. He was praying for him silently in his head while the guy was sleeping, and the guy wakes up and starts talking to him and tells him to stop it. And basically, he has a conversation with him in his mind, so he would think things, and the person could tell he was praying silently, and he would like ask him questions and like think it, and the person would respond. So if he's thinking like what's your name, the person would say their name and stuff like that. So it was very interesting, and he basically became convinced that this was something different because he basically didn't say a word through the whole thing.
If I'm not mistaken, don't they have some kind of criteria where they can kind of tell if it's more psychiatric or if it's
you missed that? We brought that up like 40 minutes ago. Yeah, it's okay. We can bring it up next week. It's fine.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
You just shut down your co-host like that? Come on.
No, I didn't shut him down. I was just read your book. I don't want us to be repetitive with the things that we're saying.
He's like, it's been 2 hours. We're not going there again.
Okay, the criteria to give the short version, it's strength, aversion to religious objects, knowing information you should know, and speaking languages you don't know. I think those are the main ones, and maybe levitating, because that kind of disproves.
Levitating. I mean, all bets are off at levitating.
Yeah, it's like
I imagine this is after they've been cleared by a psychiatrist too,
and a doctor.
Okay.
Yeah, so they have.
To be fair, Daniel, if someone starts levitating, I don't really care if they've seen a psychiatrist at that point.
Yeah,
that's
what I'll say.
So, what are you saying, that the Catholic Church should have exorcised Joseph Cupertino?
I appreciate that really niche joke that most people won't get. But yes.
Look into it. It'll mess you up for a week.
I appreciate that very niche joke. Okay. I'm sorry, were you going to say anything else, Travis?
Nope.
Okay.
Not a thing.
Well, Caleb, you don't want to pull Fodor and Nathan and do a 9-hour stream?
As fun as I'm sure when I debate Fodor, they'll have a 9-hour stream, just all the rebuttals. So that because then it'll be like, we're going to rebut every single point he says because it'll be 9 hours and I don't have the energy or the care to go back and do something to make an 18-hour one to rebut their point. So
wait, so some people are making 9-hour streams about you?
No, not about me. I'm saying I'm debating Fedor in November. So knowing that Fedor makes 9-hour streams, I wouldn't be surprised if he does one on me.
That should be a good discussion, though, Caleb. So be sure to plug it more.
It is, yeah. I think it'll be fun. It's probably because he's a very smart guy. He's certainly one of the better well, he's not even popular level. Probably one of the better internet critics of theism stuff today.
Is he a new atheist or is he more on the philosophical side?
No, he's more on the philosophical side. I don't know if I keep pulling all these books from my shelf. He wrote Unreasonable Faith, which is, if you could guess, a response to Craig.
Yeah.
He basically goes through all of Craig's 5 main points, and although I don't agree with his rebuttals, he is very thorough. So he tries to get every point he can. So he has a long part in the Kalam. He has a long part on the fine tuning, on the resurrection, and so we're debating the resurrection, but. It's even though I don't agree with him, it's what he wrote in the resurrection is still better than what a lot of other people have written. So
maybe him and I could have a conversation on the fine tuning sometime.
Hey, I'm sure we could get that arranged. So I'm sure he would be up for it.
That would be awesome. I will see both because I saw your debate with Matt Dillahunty. I thought you did a good job there.
Thank you. Did you see the one with Jonathan Pierce? That was like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, that was one of your better ones.
No, I'll check that one out.
That was on Myth Vision. I think that got almost as many views as the Dillahunty one. That was with, I don't know if you know who Jonathan Pierce is. He's a British author and skeptic who's written quite a few books. So he wrote a book on the resurrection we were discussing. That was more of a discussion. It wasn't really a debate though, but it was pretty late. I thought it went pretty well. Daniel couldn't listen to all of it because he gets too frustrated listening to Myth Vision. He has a very low tolerance.
It was just that one sort of group podcast that you did with them. And
yeah, I remember that.
Well, one thing, just a quick question, because I don't want to drag you guys out forever, but I'm just curious. So I watched Matt Dillahunty's follow-up videos about the Daniel resurrection case, and he was saying the primary source that you were using themselves have renounced it. Is that true?
They did not renounce it. He's saying they're not discussing it anymore. That's not but they never came out and said this isn't true. Okay. And the people I've talked to other people who know them and are more affiliated with them, and they've never rescinded it. So he's basically giving an argument for silence, saying that on their website when you search it, you don't see anything anymore. So he just thought that was weird, but that's not the same. And what the shame is, I did an interview for Eric Manning's channel Testify. It's fairly well known and he does a lot of stuff, but unfortunately we were just talking and I think the file was corrupted, so I'll do an interview with him sometime in the future, but that one's not going to get posted, unfortunately. That was on Miracles, and in that video I did kind of response to Dillahunty. So because it's not going to be posted now, I'm probably going to do it myself, but we responded to some of his points in that video. But I'm actually also doing because I mentioned that case in my book, I'm going to have probably a couple paragraphs responding to some of Dillahunty's critiques, because they're not really original. And although some of them are okay, most of it just comes down to, there are inconsistencies in the story. But most of the inconsistencies are very minor, and they're pretty easy to resolve once you know more about the medical data and more about just Nigerian culture. And some of it's just based on ignorance of how certain things work. But it was at least nice to see Dillahunty did not deny that this happened. He didn't say this is just a legend or a tall tale. He thinks that something really did happen. But he thinks that some of the details might just be exaggerated. So it's at least relieving to see that he's not saying this is completely fictitious.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to ask you about that. But yeah, I will be supporting you, Caleb, in your debate, and you, Travis, when you do your debate for sure. So looking forward to it.
I don't debate that often.
Discuss whatever it is.
Yeah, I like doing discussions periodically though, but not too regular. But yeah.
Gotcha. Well, you did good with Robert Stanley. I'll say you did a good job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, thank you. I want to be charitable. I just don't think the objections were very substantive. I'll just leave it at that.
Dale, all I ask for your upcoming one with Habermas is that you call it Gary versus Fairy. That's what you do.
Well, that's what I was gonna do. Yeah, and then I was with Barry Schwartz. I was originally gonna have him like a couple of years ago or something. I was gonna call
Gary, Barry, and Fairy.
I gotta get that 3. Yeah, all right, I'm gonna work on that. See if I can get Barry in this. So.
I still need to get Hugh Fair. I still need to ask him and Cheryl White to look over my chapter on like Catholic, some of the Catholic miracles. I don't know if that's more of their area, since I mean some of it's medical stuff, but some of it's with dealing with relics and sites, and that's a bit the medieval stuff might be a bit more of their field. So at least it couldn't hurt. But I'm trying to get people I know to do that. Also, since congratulations, Travis, because I know he's applying to Reasonable Faith. Right? I'm sorry, to Reasons to Believe.
Yes,
to volunteer with them. So
yes, in fact, I meant to mention that. So the end of this month, I'll be eligible to join them as like to officially join them and represent on their behalf and do various projects and things with Reasons to Believe. So really looking forward to that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I know they have a press too, so maybe I can see if one of them will want to publish my book. But we'll see. That'll be
even though you were on that show, even though you were on Theo Geeks with me and David, and you were just like saying Hugh's theories are just totally wrong, and I was the one defending him. And
who, me?
I'm just joking because you were on his side, and I was the mytho-history guy. But I kind of. I'm just being funny, but
and Travis missed out on the last show we did. It was on Origins, and I was so mad that Travis wasn't there because we were talking about Genesis, and we're like, dang it, David, I wish Travis was here because he would know more about this than we would. But David took more of Hugh Ross's route, and I was taking probably more of the mytho-history route. So I was like,
I don't take the mytho-history route. I take the I think it's ancient Near Eastern polemic to the pagan deities surrounding the Israelites at the time, saying like it's not Marduk who splits Tiamat's body in two that becomes the heavens and the earth. No, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, and it's laying out this this polemic. But what's really interesting is that if you look at these snapshot views of what's going on during the days. From the point of reference of the Spirit of God above the waters and beneath the clouds, it just so happens that it matches chronologically what we know happened in the early Earth, with like like let there be light, the breaking of the planetary debris, and what's really interesting is how it says the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. Well, that word hovering is also used in Deuteronomy, I think 32:11. Of an eagle hovering over her eggs, and everything. So the Concord is to say, well, maybe it's like a fertilization event where God is salting the early, waters with microbial life, and so it's really interesting that it seems to match up chronologically. But I think it's also really important that we make sure we don't emphasize that the ancient authors had this revelation of science and Big Bang cosmology and Earth science. Like it would have been a foreign concept to the original authors. So we want to make sure we have that.
You got to avoid concordism. That's kind of my only concern is with that.
Well, I would take a soft concordism, but what I'm saying is just that it's not. I don't know if you know who C. John Collins is, but I like his approach too. That what's going on during these days of like let separate the water from the water. Well, it just so happens that it was at that point in the early Earth history where we have the formation of a stable water cycle, and then the dry ground comes up via plate tectonics and volcanism and everything. And so you have that going on in the earth sciences, but it's in the way it's written to the ancient Israelites. They would have seen it as the putting the dome above the watery chaos and the hard dome and that sort of scenario. So it's very interesting how it kind of communicates both within the text.
Interesting. All right. Yeah, this is awesome. This is helpful because we're going to be going over in Theo Geeks on this Saturday. Me and David will be going over the verses about the firmament, apparently. So
I could talk for hours about Genesis.
Awesome.
Come on, guys.
We'll save it for another time.
For sure.
Come on, guys. We know that Martin Luther got it right.
I don't know what he said, but I'm okay.
Didn't
Martin
what Martin Luther said was that we should burn down synagogues and get rid of all the Jews.
Hey! Only I can make Lutheran jokes because I'm actually a Lutheran. So
okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
okay.
you're one of
Lutheran
those.
views of creation are kind of problematic. I won't lie.
It's not Well, you know, you can have your bad creation, and I will stick to my grape juice for my communion. So we will
There you go.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, cool. Well, yeah, thanks for inviting me. The heck with the essays. I'm done for the night.
I think we're all starting to peter out here.
Yeah. All right, cool. Well, yeah, I'll be in touch. I don't have your email, Travis, but like I might invite you to one of my shows as like a co-host if you want, if you'd ever want to.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Or something.
You could maybe try to set up that Fedora Travis debate on fine tuning.
Fedora Travis. Yeah. Well, you're gonna have connections with him. Yeah, that'll be cool.
We're actually doing it on Evan Mitten's show, so.
Oh, that's
Cerebral Faith.
Okay.
Yeah, he reached out. Originally, it was going to be Apologia, but he never got back. So he's like, "Okay, we'll do." And I was like, James Fedora. It was actually going to be a couple people. It was going to be Cosmic Skeptic and then Apologia, and none of them got back. So I was like, James Fedora will probably do it. And he's like, and James Fedora would honestly probably do better than they would.
I'm a little disappointed. I'm a little disappointed that you're not debating Apologia just because I want to see cartoon Caleb.
I don't want to see a cartoon Caleb. I think that would be. You can't improve on this. I mean, what else are you gonna do? So I mean, it's I don't know. And then it'll be for the Bible tells me so, and that'll play that jingle, and then he'll have won the argument. It's like
all you have to do is like copy and paste IP's blog response to him in all the posts.
Yeah, and he's I'm not he made a 40-minute video on burial stuff. It's like you've already been told this so many times. It's like I don't want to have to respond to a 40-minute video just out of intimidation. So it's just a lot. But it's like if you want to go read the sources and stuff, go ahead. But
I think some arguments are just worth avoiding.
Yeah, I'm surprised Andrew Loke went down and actually did a written debate with him.
I
It's
know.
Like you have an actual scholar like debating like a YouTube. Like really, that's.
I was thinking the exact same thing. That was unusual.
You know that Marvin is friends with him, right? Like, I actually knows him personally. I guess from SNS boards, he's like a Christian.
Oh yeah.
There, I guess you guys don't know him, but
I don't think I know.
He actually knows him personally, like they're friends.
But speaking of Andrew Loke, I did a webinar with him on Genesis creation and old Earth and everything, and I ran my thing of Genesis by him, and he really liked it. He said he thought it was a good point. So that's
nice. Yeah, so you have a soft spot for him. Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to work my way up. I've already done Dillahunty, so I feel like I can. I have enough practice, and Daniel and Tim are like, slow down, don't get overconfident and embarrass yourself. It's just
like you said, oh yeah, I'm going to do 3 or 4 debates in a month. I'm like, that's a lot.
Well, the T-Jump debate's the day after the Fedora debate, so I mean, it's a lot, but it's after I get done with those, I don't want to debate the resurrection for a while because like I've already done like 4 debates on the resurrection in a row. So it's like let's push it up a little bit.
It's possibly necessary that a necessary pineapple caused the disciples to hallucinate,
and they saw a cloud.
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah. All of that. Although I think I could see myself debating like John Loftus on miracles. I think that would be kind of fun. So that's just because it's John Loftus. And then maybe someday, who knows, if I can keep staying friends with Derek, I can probably get Carrier or Ehrman, but we'll see. I don't know. That one's going to do a lot of prep. I don't want to. That one I definitely would take pretty seriously. So. And of course, I don't have to pay Carrier $150 an hour to be on a show. But I'm kidding.
Yeah. I can think of a better way to spend money.
Really? What better way is it? So
I'll just invite him on through his video clips for free. You know?
just play segments of him talking. He's like,
he's totally or like what William Lane Craig did to who was that? Richard Dawkins. It's like, so what do you say, Dawkins?
Oh yeah, that debate. Yeah, that never happened.
Yeah.
That was hilarious.
That was hilarious. Yeah, that'd be a cheaper alternative. Just playing. I mean, if it's a podcast, they're not going to know. They can't see anything, so it's just.
Oh wow,
that would be really funny. All right. Yeah. Well, take care, guys. I think Travis is going to end this broadcast now because I didn't have the button on my screen, so that's why he's up here. So, thanks. We appreciate it. Tune in next, I think October 22nd for our hopefully. I'm saying hopefully because we already moved it a couple of times. So fingers crossed this is the actual one that we'll be interviewing our exorcist. So I'm very excited for that one. I hope he gets better. He was sick. I don't believe it's demon related. I don't think he was possessed or anything. So that's good. So yeah, pray that he gets better and that we will be able to do this soon. So yep. Thanks, guys.
All right.
Have a good one, guys.
Appreciate it.
Take care and God bless.